The Resolution Foundation project that by 2020, the average Briton will be poorer than they were at the beginning of this century. If you're in the bottom 10%, they project, by the end of this decade, you will be 15% poorer than you were when this coalition came to power in the first place. In Scotland, in the first year of this coalition, median incomes went down by 6%. Now, we've seen everything from cuts to working tax credits for part-time workers, to council tax benefits, to child benefit in real terms, to housing benefit. And I don't just want to throw kind of facts and figures at you. I want to talk about the kind of reality that actually means for people. So Save the Children have done this study. They've talked to thousands of parents and children right across the country. And they found that parents, in some cases, are choosing between heating their homes and feeding their children. You've got parents who are skipping their own meals in order to make sure their sons and daughters are fed. We've got children who are going without a hot meal a day. And at the same time, it was reported earlier this year that because of budget cuts, schools are actually reducing the size of school meals. Breakfast clubs are being scrapped. We are the 7th richest country on earth, and apparently we can no longer afford to feed our poorest children. That is the reality of Cameron's Britain. And at the same time, what we're seeing is this disgraceful onslaught on disabled people in this country who are being made to pay for a crisis they had absolutely nothing to do with whatsoever. We're finding across the country disabled people forced to go through the most degrading and humiliating experience at the hands of ATOS, and people with the most awful illnesses and distressing situations having their benefits stripped from them. Last year, in the first 8 months alone, 1,100 people died after being found fit for work. I'm going to give you one example. Karen Sherlock. Now, Karen Sherlock's kidneys were failing. Her Twitter account still stands. It says, "Preparing for dialysis each day is tough." She had her benefits taken away from her and she was expected to look for work. She died in June. And as the disability rights campaigner Sue Marsh put it, she died in fear because cruel men refused to listen and powerful men refused to act. That is happening right across this country, and those voices are being airbrushed out of existence by the political and the media establishment. And I have to say, it is a shame on this government and on this country. And what we're going to see on Monday, which, by the way, is the UN's International Day for People with Disabilities, the government is going to choose to celebrate that by forcing disabled people to undergo mandatory work activity, and if they do not do so, to have their benefits taken away from them. Now, that is something which this government is already laid the foundations for, and with mandatory work activity, according to the DWP, it doesn't even work. People who undergo it are no more likely to get work than anybody else, but it will just heap on the misery that disabled people are expected to go through. Now, we're often told the solution to poverty, the automatic route out of it, is work. But we've got to be honest, that's just not true. Most people living in poverty in this country are in working households. Now, that is something we have to hammer away at and remind people time after time again. Now, what I think we have to do in order to change this situation, to fight back, of a few things. Firstly, it comes down to voice. It comes down to representation. The fact that people who are living in poverty, who are unemployed, who have disabilities, are all but ignored and erased from this so-called debate. So we have to find a way to give those people a platform. Now, the reason the media aren't giving it any hearing is because, unfortunately, journalists could not be less representative of society around us. The Sutton Trust, which does studies into social mobility and so on, they looked at the top 100 journalists in Britain. They found over half of them are privately educated, and just over 1 in 10 went to a comprehensive, even though 93% of us were educated in comps. If you don't have journalists who grew up with people who themselves were in poverty, who experienced what it's like to struggle to make ends meet, you will never get those voices heard. So we have to find other ways. We have to use social media, for example, as many campaigners are already doing, to get those voices heard.